So I'm now in the city of Luxor, which was the ancient capital Luxor of the Egyptian Empire. And over the next 24 hours, I'll be visiting the temples and the markets of this city. So we are going to the Valley of Kings. So it's 8 a.m. in the morning and it's already very warm. So we are going to the tomb now, and there are a couple of things which I learned about the tombs. There are 64 tombs here, and interestingly they have been classified into A, B and C, A being the best. And the way to judge these, or the classification here, is simply based on how well preserved these tombs are. So category C are less preserved because they have been robbed and they have been broken into. Class A are well preserved comparatively. And then there are no mummies inside except for the tomb of Tutankhamun, where there is a mummy. As you can see, the tomb is very, very deep. And the reason for varying depth of different tombs is the fact that the day the king was crowned, they started digging a tomb for him till the time he was dead. So some of the tombs are really deep because the king lived longer. And for example, Tutankhamun's tomb is not very deep simply because he lived only for 9 years as the king. So we are inside the tomb now, and this is the casket in which the mummy was kept, which was then inside that coffin, so to speak. So the last tomb that we saw was a class C tomb, and this is a class B tomb, and you can make the obvious differences between the two tombs. Here, there are richer colors, more carvings which have been preserved, and it is more finely done as in comparison to the last one that we saw. This was the second tomb which was discovered long ago back. And around me you can see all these vibrant colors, which are natural colors. They were suited at some point of time because it was being used as a church. And the black fumes from the light had covered all these colors. And there was a massive restoration project which was carried out some 8 years back. It took them 4.5 years to remove the soot and for the natural color to come out. Let me tell you again, they have not painted anything here. These are all natural colors. Yeah, so we are visiting the temple of Hatshepsut. She was the first woman king of Egypt. And there is a very interesting story that you can find online on how she became the king. But where we will go is that complex. So now we are going to the temple of Hatshepsut, and over there you see some remains of an old temple which was used as a quarry for building up this temple. And there are 3 floors on this temple. Around me, if you look, there are those tombs also. These tombs were not for the kings, but they were reserved for the noblemen. During the time of Hatshepsut, there were 2 peace treaties which were formed, and this was a time, these 15 years when she ruled, which were the most prosperous years for Egypt. These 2 treaties were signed with Somalia in south. Somalia used to be a rich kingdom at that time, and Libya in the north, so as to avoid attacks coming from either north and south.
More time I spent at this temple complex, I realized not only how majestic and grand this temple is, but it's also meant to blend with its surrounding so as to merge with the nature around it.
Left hand side, the Ramesseum, the temple of the King Ramses II. But look there. What do you see?
The region where they mine alabaster and basalt, and I've come to a quarry where they actually work on these stones. So you can actually see this is how, I mean, those big blocks are how they're mined, and here are some workers who are actually working on these stones, polishing them. So the entire stone goes from this stage here to this final polished state. Now, what's the uniqueness of alabaster? The uniqueness of alabaster is that it is translucent. So when the light is put into it, it glows, and a part of the light passes out. So behind me is the temple of Memnon. Now this used to be a very, very big temple, but this temple is very close to Nile. So you can see all this greenery because of the proximity with water. As a result of that, the foundation of this temple was weakened. And then when there was an earthquake in 27 BC, this whole temple collapsed. What remained were these pieces of statues, and what you see in front is the restored statues from the old leftover remains.
In the evening, I just went out for a walk in the city center.
Everything all right? Put them up. Smiling.
So I'm in a traditional Egyptian souk in the ancient city of Luxor, which was once the capital of Egypt. And around me, the shops are selling spices, some clothes, some souvenirs, and paintings. They claim that this is original papyrus. So I'm sitting at this cafe in the souk, and I'm enjoying my hibiscus, cold hibiscus tea. Hibiscus, if you don't know what that is, it's a flower which is dried, and you can make tea out of it. In winter, they drink the hot tea, but in summer, they make a very nice cold drink out of this. So this morning I am in the temple of Amun-Ra in the town of Karnak, which is just outside Luxor. And Amun-Ra is the god of gods for Egyptians. And this is how the temple looks like. It's a pretty big temple at 250,000 square meters. It's the biggest in the world. We are standing here and we are going to be walking through this temple. But one important thing to understand why this temple is so big is that Amun-Ra is the god of the gods for Egyptians. So everyone in Egypt had to believe in this god. And that is why they made this temple to be such a big place, because all the Egyptians at that point of time, they were required to come to this temple at least once in their lifetime. So this temple is where the celebrations used to happen. They used to accommodate thousands and thousands of people coming every year to visit. We've just entered inside the temple, and over there is Nile. And this flooring that you see here used to be the foundation of the houses which have been moved as a part of the restoration. Now we are walking towards the main temple, but in olden times this used to be flooded because of Nile. And there was a docking area over there where the boats used to come during the time of the flood to bring people in.
And this is where the docking used to happen.
And behind me you will see a column of a sphinx. This sphinx is inspired by what we saw in pyramids, but different because they have a head of ram but the body of a lion. And head of ram is a symbol for god Amun, on which this temple is modeled.
So, we've been talking about.
So I'm inside the complex now, and over here you can see a water body. This used to be the sacred lake, and it was connected to Nile at one point of time. Around me you can see the obelisks. That obelisk on the left hand side was for King Tutmosis III, and the one on the right hand side was for King Hatshepsut, whose temple we visited yesterday. And this was another. They used to be like, I think if I remember correctly, there used to be like 19 obelisks in this region. Now it has been taken away, but the tip of these obelisks used to be gold plated, so they used to shine in sunlight from far off. So people who were coming from far off lands, they used to, I mean, they could look at these shiny minarets and know where to come. So I learned something about the restoration work today, and I just want to share that knowledge with you. Over there you see the pieces which have been found. Now it's very difficult to mix and match them into a proper shape on how they were. So what they do here is they number each of these pieces, and they use computer software, computer programs to recognize how these fit together in a puzzle. And as a result of that, you can see on the left hand side that they are now carrying out the restoration work. So they're broken pieces, but they have been using plaster to make them into a whole, just like the way it was many years back. So we are in the biggest column court in the world. It's inside the Karnak temple, and there are 134 giant columns here all around me. And this roof used to be covered and painted like the way possibly if you can see over there or on these blocks. Now there was an obvious engineering challenge at that point of time, which was how to get natural light in, because there was no artificial light at that point of time. The designers came with a very smart solution, which was to create the central column over there taller than the rest of the columns. So as a result of that, when the roof was going up, there was a natural bend, a U-turn, and that gap is where those windows were placed for the natural light to come in. One more thing which I want to talk about is cartouche. Cartouche is an Egyptian term, ancient Egyptian term, used for ID, and normally these IDs were for the kings. So an example of a cartouche is here, this block, which has carved hieroglyphics on it. Now this cartouche can be read from left to right or from right to left, depending on the grammar which was used. And this used to be the open courtyard. This is where the people used to gather. And in front is an offering table from that time made of alabaster stone. This used to be a white table where people used to offer any kind of things like grains or food. Human sacrifices were not allowed. So we are in the temple of Luxor, and this used to be the temple for the family of Amura god, and the main temple was in Karnak, but it was connected all the way here, which was a distance of 1.5 kilometers or so through a pathway. Now this is also called the temple of three religions, the first one being the Egyptian, but there was also a church which was constructed here during the Greek times, and there are some leftovers from that time. This used to be the main altar. And over there you can see the frescoes. This did not survive for a long period of time. There was sandstorm, and as a result of that, a lot of this was buried under sand. So as I mentioned that this used to be a temple of three religions. We saw the church inside, but it was later moved from that part to this part here. This church was constructed around 580, but afterwards it did not survive for long. It got buried under sand. And then on top of that, a mosque was created. And this mosque is still in use. So people come every day to say their prayers over there. I just want to show you one more thing here. We are close to the church and the mosque, but I just want to show you to what extent this was buried under sand. It was almost till those windows over there that this was buried, because the entrance of that mosque is over there and was constructed on top of this church. So this is where I ended my visit to the Luxor temple and headed back to the city. With this, I wrap up my 24 hours in Luxor. In last 24 hours, I have seen the east bank and the west bank of Luxor. The east is filled with temples and the west is filled with tombs and the Valley of the Kings. Luxor certainly lives up to its reputation. By 2030, it will become the largest open-air museum in the world, and that is a good reason to come to this place.